Welcome to Permission to Evolve. I'm your host, Brandon Thielk. I'm a performance and life coach.
I'm Holly Deschenes. I'm Brandon's co-host and producer for this podcast.
We're coming off our Oceanside, California trip, back to reality a little bit. Yeah, so it was a great trip. The race went very well. Didn't go exactly the way I wanted it to for my clients, but that's the nature of it. We just view these things as just kind of an evolving process, and there's always new feedback. But then, yeah, we got the opportunity to kind of float around Southern California and do some content. So that'll be coming out for you guys. That was super cool. I just love when we get some different scenery going, different inspiration, and already loving the stuff that I'm seeing from you. A lot of good stuff.
It's always fun when we get to do some stuff in person, and always our first one back where I'm staring at you through glass and the internet feels like a little bit of a letdown. But here we
Yeah.
are. Yeah,
Yeah.
so no beautiful sunsets in the background for this one if you're watching this on YouTube, but it'll still be good.
So today we're going to get into this idea of permission to reflect. So I've been seeing a real kind of float around the internet lately. It was of kind of a tech hedge fund guy, Mark Andreessen. And so the clip is of him basically talking about how he doesn't self-reflect at all and that you should just move forward. And it's getting a lot of reaction. So I think this is an important idea of there's a balance. We don't want to get caught in over analyzing and overthinking like literally everything we do. And many of us get caught there. But then we also don't want to be so self-absorbed that we feel like our actions don't impact or negatively affect other people. And so reflection's an important idea. That's how we learn is we get experiences and then we unpack them. So if I just have the mindset of I just need to keep moving forward all the time, I'm operating on old patterns and I'm not really making changes internally. I'm actually might just be trying to force situations. And generally that's what has negative impacts on other people. This idea of reflection, it's really about understanding yourself at a deeper level, but then also being able to pull from your experiences and integrate them. If I'm not unpacking things, if I'm not taking a deeper look, then my same behaviors are just going to continue to build and compound. And the stuff that we do very well at, that we have a lot of confidence in, that our strengths, we generally don't need a ton of self-reflection in those areas. It's more of the weaknesses. It's more of the stuff where we have insecurities, we have wounds, because we have reactions behind those things, and that might not be producing all optimal results, but then it also might, that's generally where we're going to have negative impacts on other people is when we're operating in our weaknesses. And because the reaction is to prevent a pain, a wound, but we actually just keep recreating it over and over again. We're going to get into the mechanics of this. I think it's a super interesting topic, one that we commonly talk about, but it's just kind of going deeper into that well of the importance of it and the balance of reflection.
I haven't seen this video yet. I'm sure I will now, though, that we've talked about it. But but yeah, that is very curious to me of like how do you not self-reflect? Like what is that like? Also
Yeah,
makes me curious.
I don't know. I think the high school version of us and stuff, like there's probably not as much of that going on, but to like stay in that mindset the entirety of your life and build your career and your family and like all those things on those ideas, I think would be pretty challenging to be around.
Before we dive into talking more about that and to do our question of the week for Brandon. And just as a reminder, if you have a question for Brandon, you can submit that via any of the socials, via DM, or if you know one of us personally, via text or via email. Any of those things will work to get a question to us. And we would love to hear about the things you're curious about and the topics that you would like us to discuss in addition to any questions. For today, this doesn't necessarily go perfectly well with reflection. For this week, the question I have for you is when was the last time you did something for the first time?
Yeah, I would say it was the cycling trip recently, which I'm actually going to do again next week. Other than like just kind of riding a bike as a kid, that hasn't been a part of my life, but actually going long distances and even riding on a busy road, that was all new experiences for me, going up a mountain, all that stuff. And that was the thing is it kind of like brought new things out of me. It was this, I didn't have a lot of resistance to doing it. It was just more of a, I'll see how it goes. But it, it wasn't as big of a challenge as I thought it would be. It just kind of got to the point where I was just like tired of doing it because I was sore, but there wasn't any moment where I felt any fear or freaked out, or it was just the initial stage of getting familiar with the bike and kind of working those kinks out. That was the only like frustration I would say I experienced. And also going up the mountain when the grade was like 10 for a couple miles. That was pretty frustrating, but other than that, a very enjoyable experience. And I guess at this point, I generally just keep an open mind about anything, and I'm not afraid to ask questions. I'm not afraid to look stupid, that kind of stuff. So there isn't usually anxieties around doing new things for me at this point. It's just kind of more of a curiosity of this is a new challenge, and I guess I trust myself to figure it out as I go.
Cool. So I guess we will jump from first time doing something new question into permission to reflect and a little bit more around, yeah, the video that you saw. And I'm sure as we go, I'll have more questions about that because like I mentioned before, I'm just very curious how that even works.
It is pretty baffling, and I think we're in this new like stage where a lot of people like go to therapy, are more self-reflective, which is a newer development, I would say. In the video, he's making the point that this is just like relatively new within the last 100 years. And when you think about the great philosophies and religions and all this stuff, it's like thousands of years ago. And it is about the inner work. It's about thinking about things at a deeper level. And so, yeah, it's obviously it's generating a lot of buzz because of a lot of the disconnects. But then, I think it is like being in this phase we are in now, like his mindset, I think would have been pretty normal, like maybe 30 years ago, 20 years ago, something like that. And, especially like more male oriented mindset. And just, it's kind of shocking at this point because we know like the damage that does. Many of us were raised in households with some degree of that going on, of not being able to question somebody, that they're just always right, whatever they say goes. And that does create a lot of psychological damage. And generally for like people that are empathic and feel more, it, it's such a like a odd thing to even conceptualize, because it's just like, I think if you're a feeler, like you kind of err more on the side of like overthinking, trying to align your actions to not hurt other people because you've experienced what that feels like. And a lot of people that go to therapy or get a coach or any of these types of things, it's generally to deal with the people in their life that operate that way. Because what can you do when somebody's not willing to listen to you, or they always have to be right, or even if they're like extremely wrong, there's that stubbornness where they can't see that, right? And so that is that inability to self-reflect. And I think that's kind of one of those, we throw around the word narcissist a lot, but I think it's narcissism is really kind of a stage of development. Like I think more when we're in high school, college, we're more egocentric, and generally what we feel like everything in our life is so important, and that, everything is about us, and it's just an immaturity. There is other people we have to interact with. We don't want to be damaging other people. And that's when we make mistakes and do like hurt other people, that's really the purpose of reflection, is to kind of go through that exercise of like feeling the weight of that. Because if I'm just taking actions and not thinking about them, operating on my default settings. Okay. So it's just whatever I was taught, like that's good enough. And I'm just going to move forward with that. Bringing, if everything's pretty healthy and balanced there, like a lot of that stuff is actually going to be pretty good. But if I've like had the challenging experience, a lot of the things I'm going to be acting from are more survival based, or more me trying to navigate situations. These survival patterns, it's really just for us to stay safe in dealing with challenging people that probably aren't self-reflecting or aren't taking responsibility for their actions. That's where a lot of the people pleasing comes in. That's where the avoidance of confrontation, the I need to self-sacrifice in order to stay safe, like that's those things that um, the people that are on the receiving end, it's like we're carrying that stuff forward, and that's what holds us back in life. Okay, is I need to evolve out of those patterns. It's not about swinging from I'm thinking too much about everything to now I'm not going to think at all. It's a spectrum where we're going to kind of gradually try to step into more action where we're going to, as I'm aligning my mind in the pieces, like it's like I'm running it through the filter of like this idea that, I'm not trying to negatively affect other people. There's things I might not be aware of where that might happen, but it's being in tune with the feeling sensation that gives us that information. So it is through like compassion that we connect with people. So if I'm always right and whatever I'm doing wins and all that stuff, it's that kind of dominance, like competitive mindset. I'm doing damage, but I'm just like I'm numb inside, so that I'm not actually getting the feedback. Okay, so I don't think most people start this way. I think it's the accumulation of a lot of pain, and then they start to numb it out and they start to detach from it. And also, a lot of high performers, they are driven by pain. And in that, there's a phase where your ego has to get really strong because that's what allows you to put the work in to really develop yourself. But it's over time, we want to smooth that out. We want to understand that like not everything is about me, that everybody is free to live their lives the way they would like. And I don't need to impose myself on other people to make things happen. It's more of me aligning with what I want and cleaning up the negative emotions so that I'm not acting from them. So the only reason I would hurt another person is if I've been hurt myself. It's this transference of energy that's kind of never ending. And with this work, what we do is we transform that. So whatever was done to you, we feel the pain and we move through it, and then we shift our mindset to let it go. Okay. So it's a lot of times the overthinking is the carrying the weight of other people's problems that aren't ours to solve. The helpers of the world, the people, the healers of the world, generally that's kind of the badge of honor of like, I'm more aware. And so I see how these things affect other people. And so I'm trying to make corrections in another person. We're trying to force our will that way. But generally, that doesn't work. It's this understanding that people are at where they're at. If they've haven't developed that ability to self-reflect, they've probably just adapted that mindset of to just work hard, just keep always pushing forward and operate that way. And there's not much of that self-reflection going on. This is about finding the balance of there is that pit I can fall into where I'm thinking too much about everything and that starts to create inaction. It's just kind of seeing, but that's generally where I'm fixated on other people trying to solve their problems and they're not willing to hear me. And so I feel like I'm at a standstill with it. With each one of these times it happens, we want to go inward and start to understand it at a deeper level of how can I free myself up. We do that through reflection, and we do that through kind of take an inventory of what's my actual work here, and what are the things like I'm just trying to prevent fears from happening, where I'm trying to manipulate my environment different ways. This is like a deep well, and there's so many layers and levels to it. But that's the thing is we want to latch on to the best version we can based on where we're functioning at. We need new experiences to pull feedback from. That's how we make things happen. That's how we create things in our life is we need the action. But then it's the back and forth rather than just me staying in one mode. If I'm just in action mode all the time, there's going to be problems there. I'm not going to be receiving the feedback I need. If I'm just in reflection mode all the time, I'm going to find it very hard to act on things. So we take the step forward, get the information, then we unpack it through reflection, learn from it, and then we build up to take our next action.
So you've mentioned a couple times that some of the reflection is us being caught in other people's problems or focused on them. I think that we should talk a little bit about exactly what you mean by that, because I think for sometimes in my experience, the reflection isn't necessarily worrying about their problems as much as it is worrying about their judgment. So maybe there's a bridge there, or maybe there's something to talk about. And maybe in terms of this video, even there's like a positive takeaway from what he was talking about when it comes to something like that.
So a lot of times when we grow up in these challenging environments, the judgment of our parents does have a direct impact on us. We kind of fear the reactions. The part is, well, when we're a kid, we view our adults as like having it all figured out. Like they're the adult, they should know. Um, Not until we get into adulthood ourselves and we start to see like, oh, most people are just trying to figure it out. They don't really know. They're making things up. They're really this product of their beliefs and what was taught to them. Whatever they're teaching is generally what they were taught, some version of it, unless you've done this deeper work. We're kind of left alone with a lot of things. Like they might just be passing down what that was taught to them. That's the generational lens. And when it doesn't sit well with me, I might be left alone with those feelings. Okay. So kids need parents to help them regulate, to help them understand and to work through things. And many times there's the silent treatment. There's the just kind of like when there's a blowout, you're just left alone with yourself to try and figure out what you did wrong. The kid always makes it about themselves. And so that's the part that's tricky is if we're left alone a lot to try and process these big events growing up, we tend to think everything's our fault. We tend to think that we're the problem. We tend to think, and so we try harder to try and not be that way. That puts us into the overthinking. That puts us into the inaction. Is because like I'm taking on. My parent could have done something really messed up, but like if I'm making that my problem, then I don't really have a path forward with it. I'm trying to reconcile something that doesn't make sense to begin with, and so that leaves me spinning my wheels constantly. Those are the difficult things. That's why we need the healing work is to detach from those ideas of like, oh, this was just this person acting out of a wound. It wasn't really even about me. We're trying to depersonalize these things that were damaging to us that we carried as our own burden. It's really just the product of the things being passed down the line. And so healing is really about clear thinking. These are kind of tricky concepts because most situations are actually complex. It's like it's a mixture. Yeah, they were wrong, but maybe I was also wrong too. Or but I'm wrong because like I learned to do things in a way that's not productive either because I was trying to survive that stuff. All we're trying to do is restore that clarity to the mind of being able to like see things for what they really are. And that means like, yeah, if somebody's got anger issues, I'm going to be walking on eggshells. I'll probably never be right around them. They're probably not really owning their problems. Feelers of the family are the ones that take that stuff on and they try to fix it. And then that creates anxiety of like every time I'm around somebody with anger issues, like I feel like there's something I have to do to balance that person out. And so that's where self-sacrifice starts to happen is like I'm trying to regulate their system, but I'm like going outside myself and I'm actually sacrificing myself. And because my attention is attuned to the volatile personalities around me. And so I end up giving up a lot of my life to try and like fix other people in that place. And so you see that in people in relationships, their dad was volatile. They're looking for like a partner that's like that they can fix as well. They get kind of caught in this idea of like, because they're always you're just trying to fix your original caregiver. You're just trying to give them all your attention so that they'll love you. But people that can't love themselves don't really have that capacity and space to hold for other people. And if somebody's wounded, it depends on the day. It depends on what's going on in their life. If they're plugged into the wound, they're going to be acting from that if they're not reflecting themselves. So it's the ability, we all make mistakes. We all sometimes these things get the best of us. It's that ability to recognize like, oh, I was wrong here, and then do the work to unpack that. The purpose of reflection is to learn from the behaviors. And generally it's through that lens of like, if I'm damaging other people, that makes me like face it. Cause many people are like willing to hurt themselves in the process. They're willing to carry all the extra weight as long as it's not hurting other people. But indirectly, when we carry all this extra energy that's not ours, it really does debilitate us. It really shuts us down in so many ways. And then it also we become like wishy-washy. We're not like somebody that's reliable because we're feeling all these emotions that we don't know what to do with. So then it starts to be dependent on our mood, right? So it affects my relationships, like whether I can show up or not. The ideal situation is like everybody just handles their own business and does that properly. But there's a lot of characters in our lives that aren't willing to do that. Unfortunately, sometimes that's a larger part of who we have in our life is family members or friends from the past that we're hanging on to that are operating that way. And we feel like there's nothing we can do about it. And so it's really about untangling yourself from those dynamics and seeing it for what it really is. So if somebody's not willing to reflect, we want to believe that about them. Like if they show us time and time again that they do things and then they don't take responsibility for it, like we want to be in tune with their actions. We want to don't want to be in tune with them saying that they're going to change or things are going to be different. Unless you see different actions, we have to trust that because a lot of us get our hopes up that people are going to change when they talk about stuff. But it's like, are they doing the deeper work? Are they like shifting how they relate to you? Are they carrying themselves differently? Are they showing up differently? Do they take responsibility for what they feel? And so if somebody's totally numbed out where they can't really feel anything, like that's the perfect storm for them just always pushing forward. But you're going to see it. Like there's not going to be kind of the spark in their eyes. So they're just going to be going through the motions. There can be a lot of entitlement. There can be a lot of it's just whatever way they're going to cope with the guilt of the things that they've known they've done that they've buried. Are they ever going to look at that? Most people kind of need a big wake up call to shake them up so that they actually start to reflect. The idea of like always pushing forward, that's a survival strategy. You know, you might come from very humble beginnings. You might have like really like tried to build a life for yourself, but we get stuck in these modes of like, yeah, work's all that matters. I just have to keep pushing through all these stresses. And when you see things like a close family member passing or anything like, or like a health scare, like those are the things that really shake those people because they're not in tune with their life. They're attracting these experiences that are going to force them to slow down and to question themselves. And not everybody takes that opportunity. The stubbornness is the ego trying to protect itself that I need to be right for some reason, and that's generally to deal with the guilt and the shame that they have inside. The feelers like generally take on that because they can see glimpses of the person of like who they could be, and so it's just like, oh, if they could just see these things, then maybe things would be better. But it's really about kind of seeing that if they're not doing that for themselves, if there's not that willingness, then there is nothing I can really do. My job is to be in more of acceptance of that person and the way they're operating. And also to protect myself, I need to start to detach from things emotionally and start to surrender the trying to fix somebody piece and get to this place of getting really clear on myself. Okay. So if I'm wrapped up in everybody else, now I'm not able to move forward in my life. So we have to detach for our own good, and a lot of times we're just kind of caught on to this idealized version of another person of like, if they would just make these adjustments, then maybe I would feel love from them. But many people are so disconnected from that that it's such a long road to go. And is that where we really need to be putting our energy?
Let's go back to a little bit on the way this maybe works generationally and imagine that if you grew up in a house where pushing forward was rewarded or whatever else. But when you were talking through some of that, it made me think about a conversation I had a couple weeks ago with someone who talked about essentially like drive, achievement, and perfectionism, which I think goes along with this in the home that she grew up in and tied to things like lots of higher education. So mother, grandmother, PhD holders, multiple degrees, sisters, multiple degrees and things. And it's sort of like this needing to achieve and
Mhm.
be women that are really strong and have gotten all of these things and achieved all of these things. But what she talked about generationally in this was that even if it halved this like generational idea of like achievement and being smart and having the PhD, even if it halved in every generation, that their family will never be rid of it completely. And so it just, as you were talking through the generational thing, let's just talk about that a little bit more in this kind of context, right? Like it softens every generation, but short of not having any additional children, that's like going to run through that family theoretically forever.
unless somebody stops it, right?
Sure. Yeah.
These things, they're very practiced. We're talking about a value system, right? So that's like part of the family identity is the higher education. There's a lot of weight put into that, and there's a lot of expectations attached to that. If you're not aligning with it, then there's going to be shame placed on you until you do align with it. Because once it's like so ingrained, like the whole system continually reinforces that. I end up just kind of like taking on the stuff by osmosis. Around it so much. These are the expectations. There's judgments placed on people that aren't this way. When we're talking about within a family, we're trying to gain love, acceptance, and approval. And if that's dependent on a specific idea, it might be terrifying to step out of that because the backlash of like, oh, like I'm not good enough and is the only way and that's also kind of a safety, right? If I just follow the path, and that's around the like keeping the peace thing of like, yeah, this is the path of least resistance, is to just go along with these things. But what we want to pay attention to is like, does that feel true for me? Like, am I just doing this because it's expected of me? That's what we're talking about through the performance lens of anybody is like, well, a lot of the things you're doing is generally that's a strategy to try and get love from caregivers. And if I might be being somebody I'm not, I might be stepping into this life that doesn't feel right to me, but I'm just going with it because the momentum behind it's so strong. And so generational stuff, that's what we're talking about. It just has a lot of momentum behind it where you don't even question it because it's just kind of the default. This is what we do. And if you don't do it, then you're not one of us, right? Which kind of plays on those fears of like the tribal mentality, which is like a main survival idea of like, I want to be in the pack because that's safe. So if I'm outside the pack, the black sheep, we call it, that means like I'm questioning everybody else's reality. And so it's me against the world. It's me against all these people that have chosen this similar path and have never questioned it. So if I question it, that would bring up insecurities in them. Okay. And that's what a lot of the shame and the backlash is that is everybody supposed to, get their doctorate? I think it takes a very specific person to like want to do that. I think most people like naturally, they probably like don't want to take that path, but it's like, if it feels like it's required, there's a lot of self-sacrifice interwoven into that. But it's easier. So I'm just going to do it. I'm going to get it over with. But then you just keep making those sacrifices. So as soon as I sacrifice there, now it's like, what else am I sacrificing in that process? It's not just the one thing. It's going to be, you're going to be able to take a step back and see that it's like shown up in just about everything. And this might show up in like, oh, the type of partner you're supposed to marry and things like that. Those types of expectations, those subtle, hey, these are the things that we do. And if you don't align with them, you're not going to have an easy road. There's going to be a lot of backlash that comes with that. And that's what I commonly refer as the gauntlet. Is like anytime you're going against the grain, is you're confronted with, so whoever's around you, if they don't support what you're doing, yeah, there's going to be people talking shit about you. There's going to be comments made. There's going to be people that are upset with you. But it's really, they feel like you're questioning their identity. Okay. And so when somebody builds something into their identity, it's like who they think they are, but that's like really this mask that they've put on, that they've built over life based on the feedback of what's going on around them. If we make people question themselves, now they feel insecure. Usually most people don't want to sit with that. Definitely like when we're dealing with stuff around higher education, a lot of times people really go all in on that because it gives them this like superior of like, oh, I'm smarter than everybody else. It's kind of that slippery slope of like, you build your identity around one thing. And if that gets questioned, you start like attacking the people that aren't on board with that, because now that makes you start questioning yourself. And these are all very subtle things playing in the background that most people aren't conscious of. If it's not right for me, and I've never given myself permission to question it, and I've just gone with the path, I might think back to maybe I did want something different, but I just took the easy road. It starts to point to their regrets and the unfulfilled life and the things that they like sacrificed in order to align with what what was expected. And so if you're doing things based on what's expected of you, that's generally going to be off base. Like we're all individuals, we all want different things. And not that that can't be the right path for somebody, but is it the right path for everybody? Like absolutely not. And so the freedom to explore that and to kind of open that up, that's a lot of what happens now, where we're less and less in survival now. So these tracks aren't as solid anymore. And so people are thinking deeper, questioning things more. The softening is accelerating. You just think of like a couple generations ago, whatever your parents did, you maybe worked on the farm or whatever. And that's what's expected of you. And that's just what you do because you don't have any other possibilities. But really the world's so big. There's so many options now that for to just follow the same path as somebody else, just because that's what they did, that's becoming less and less valid. And because of all the opportunity out there, these things always weigh heavily on people. I know with in my family, like my dad was a painter, is a painter. Like his dad was a painter. Dad's dad was a painter. It was like this very practiced thing where it's just like it has a lot of momentum behind it. But to really stand up and say, hey, I have zero desires behind that, there was a lot of backlash there. That's the thing. To like go along with that would be living an authentic life. And it would never feel happy or fulfilling. It would just be like, I didn't make choices in my life. I just did what was expected of me, and because that's what gives me the gold star, that's what gives me the approval, is I get to bond with the people that created me. And part of it, part of an authentic path is this ability to disappoint others and be okay with that and trust that the love strong enough, generally like there is between a child and their parents. They might be disappointed or upset with you, but there's still like love at the bottom of it. It just might take a while to get back there.
If we kind of circle back on the video a little bit, and when I think about sort of the statement that was made, right, around just moving forward and not reflecting, and we can unpack the fact that this person believes this is like a relatively recent thing when as soon as you were talking about that part of it, I was like, oh, well, what about like all the Stoics and whatever? Whole other topic.
Mhm.
But it makes me think about someone running from something. Do you interpret it that way?
Well, absolutely. There's just like a massive amount of avoidance. And through the perspective of a billionaire, like I think you probably get what you want all the time. You know, there's a lot of people answering to you, like you have massive resources where you probably don't have to reflect that much. You know, and not everybody's in that situation, but even in that situation, you know, there are a lot of flaws to that thinking. But yeah, it is just going all in on achievement, and that's all that matters. And it doesn't matter what I do in the process to get there. I think that's the greed piece is very difficult because it's very damaging to a lot of people where just gets concentrated in certain areas. And it's just because most people aren't willing to do those things to get there. If you're a good person, you generally do feel bad about doing negative things to other people. I think the finance world in general is like pretty detached, like because you kind of do like vote with your money, right? And you know when you're like destroying companies and livelihoods just like to make the bottom line look bigger and all, you're like so detached and removed from the realities of your actions that you might just be doing on a computer screen. In that place, like I think it would be hard to not numb out, be hard not to be detached because if you're like benefiting from all that stuff too, like that's like my whole source of income is dependent on me doing these terrible things that I actually don't even have to face. Like that's the accountability piece. I think that's what creates a lot of problems is people are so far removed from the realities of their actions at that level. There's so much damage done, but you don't actually have to feel the weight of that. But on some level you do. I think that's what we can justify anything, right? That's what the ego does. It's designed to protect our self image. And so I can justify any actions I take. Like I can tell myself a story that makes me feel okay about it. When I don't actually have to see the direct impact of my actions, like I think that process is a lot easier. That's what's tough is I think if you're faced with suffering, if you're faced with seeing what you've actually done, I don't think you can look away. But when there's like all these barriers to you seeing that, like, yeah, kind of ignorance is bliss in that place. Like you don't have to confront it. So I'm just going to be in my own little world and just keep doing what I'm doing because I don't have to feel the impacts of that. I think it is that ability to confront stuff. Most people are running from something. What builds a mindset that I'm all that matters, and that my achievement is above and beyond anything else, even collateral damage and all that stuff. That has to come from a lot of pain. That means you're really disconnected from yourself, disconnected from your soul, to really just know that I can do anything I want and it doesn't actually matter. Okay. Because anybody who's in tune, in touch, like would feel the weight of those things, would ask those deeper questions. And it's the drive of greed can definitely like produce monsters. If money's all that matters, like what am I willing to do to get it? There's people that would do a lot of like messed up things. That's the nature of it. But but why do I need that much money to begin with, right? Like why do I need that status? That's usually going to come from not feeling good enough. I need to show this to the world how great I am because I actually feel very empty inside. Somebody that's numb, like that's what they're going to be feeling. They're going to be feeling a lot of that. And it doesn't your nervous system tracks all this stuff. It's just like if you're detached from feeling, you're not getting the feedback. And so that's the things. You might have just stacked so many layers on stuff that you're so numb that you've lost that sensation. And that's where people become bitter and heartless. They don't have that feedback anymore because so much of the pain is stacked up that they've just kind of unplugged from it altogether. And that's what kind of gives you the free reign to do whatever you want, is when you're so disconnected from yourself that you're not getting that feedback anymore.
Let's talk about a little bit more about the line overthinking, which would be my tendency, right? Or over reflecting, thinking about, crap from childhood or high school or 6 months ago or whatever it might be. Let's talk about the line between that and ignoring reflection altogether and like the right balance.
Well, a big part of what I try to do is create a rhythm to it. And that's what I've described earlier, where I'm using my actions to give me feedback and then I'm going to unpack that stuff. It's a back and forth. And we'll need more reflection if I can't live the life I'm currently living anymore. If I've been pushing forward so long, I'm burnt out, exhausted, nothing feels right to me anymore. That's probably where we're going to need to take a step back and dismantle a lot. So I need to go deeper in because I'm trying to find clarity on what my next chapter is. The going inward for extended periods of time, which I've done, and it's that's just like, hey, like nothing in my life's working. I fundamentally, like, I'm not seeing things the right way. Okay. I feel like any action I take is actually going to produce negative results. And so that's where we might need some time periods to really step back and reassess a lot. And that might be an extended time period. But like once we get some clarity, like once we get some insights, it's like we want to start to put that into action in terms of like, okay, I'm making these adjustments. I need to get some data. I need to like see how I'm doing. And so I need to go experience the adjustments I've made. When we come out of things, it is about getting some reps in. Based on where I'm at, this is kind of the best I see. So I'm going to go test it out and put it to work. And so that's where we want to start to build into some actions. When we're at a place where we're over reflecting, it's going to take us a little bit to work out of it because everything's a momentum game. And so if I don't have any momentum going, I just want to start to take small steps to build momentum. And so I'm continually in this place of making adjustments at that place at that phase. So with I'm going to go put some actions out, some small steps, and then I'm going to go check in. I just want to get to the rhythm of learning from every experience, especially in the relationship to the things that matter most to me. If I'm really trying to accomplish something, if I have this deep desire behind something, that's what my lab is going to be. Okay. That's going to be where I'll probably put my focus. Sometimes I might be focused on career, sometimes relationship, whatever, but whatever my dominant focus is, that's where I want to be more in this testing things out. What's cool is once you like find something to latch onto that you want to take some actions on, um, that's going to bring to the surface the things you still need to work on. And that's what we reflect on. Okay. So, yeah, this pattern, this reaction I had, these things that showed up, like, what is that linked to? What's cool about this work is like once I'm using this dominant focus, but it's giving me information for all areas of my life. Okay. Because we're talking about me rebuilding my nervous system. And so as I take steps in that direction, because I have this focus that drives me, I'm going to unpack those things and I'm going to make adjustments at this level. But now it's going to start impacting these other areas, like kind of passively, where I'll start to see like improvements in all areas just because I'm focused on this one thing over here. There's a point once we like build something into a strength where we need less and less reflection because I've smoothed out my mindset. I'm in complete alignment with this thing. And so now it's really about getting out of my head and just going to act because like I've made all the adjustments on the front end. So any action I'm taking isn't going to take that much reflection because I'm operating in this clear lane. Okay. And so it's like if I'm still getting a lot of negative feedback from my actions, that's where we probably need a little more reflection. But if things are going pretty well, we don't mess with it much. It's just subtle like adjustments, subtle refinements that we make at that level. You look at a professional athlete, something like that, they've put a massive amount of work into it. They have tons of strengths. It's going to be about trying to optimize things rather than rebuild. Okay. So depending on the phase you're in, if I hit a wall and I'm rebuilding, okay, I'm gonna have more reflection, and then but it's gonna be difficult if I've kind of our mind operates on what we normally do. So if I've kind of built this phase where I'm not taking much action at all, it is going to take me a bit to work up to that momentum. But I eventually want to start to get things moving when I feel good about what I'm doing. Okay, so that's the feedback place is like, how do I feel about what I'm putting out into the world? And if I'm feeling pretty good, now I just keep building off of that. It's smaller adjustments, it's less reflection. And if I do make a big mistake, that's where I step back and I dig a little deeper and try and understand it on a bigger level. But the stronger we are at something, the less of those mistakes we're making. It's just that's how you build a weakness into a strength. It's simply your mindset about something. It's your relationship to something. So if I have a lot of buried shame, if I have a lot of guilt, disappointment, letdown, that's going to be where my weaknesses lie. And so if that's what's holding me back, that's where I need to spend my energy. So if I'm carrying all those things in a certain area, I probably don't want to be taking a ton of action. Okay. I probably want to sort that out first so that I can actually build from a solid foundation. It's about knowing yourself. It's about seeing like, okay, if I see these problems continuously showing up, and then when they happen, I'm hypercritical. I beat up on myself. I dig into shame of like, this is all my fault. I'm a terrible person, like all that stuff. Like it serves us to spend extra time in reflection to try and work through that rather than just carry that into another experience. And so, sometimes we have to keep our life going. So it's like you see this in like marriages, things like that of like, okay, nothing's working. So now we need to take a step back, maybe from career and put less focus over there, just really tend to the marriage to try and rebuild it. It's just giving attention to whatever needs attention the most. And through that, like as you form these new relationships with yourself in relation to what you're trying to accomplish or what you're focused on, um, it's the energy you're bringing where you're changing how you relate to things, and that starts to have these effects in other areas that bring you further along. So that's what I talk about when you have a lot built up over time. But there's so many different directions you can pivot because you've cultivated a certain energy in your nervous system that you have certain strengths and you can start to leverage that in certain ways. And so any like movement I make in a different direction, I've already got a lot of information built behind that. I just need to reframe it through that lane and then also address like, okay, if I'm shifting gears, there might be some things that I need to go to work on in this new thing. I might need to develop new skills. I might need to clean up some other aspect of myself to realign with something. But most of the time, it's like I have a lot that I can carry with me, and so there is no wasted experience. It's just if I've left things in a negative place and that's continually stacked up on me, that's where I definitely need to reflect more to just continue to align the pieces, because mindset is applicable to everything in your life. We think we like to compartmentalize, and that's why we see people with great careers but terrible relationships and that kind of stuff is like they've failed to take those principles and ideas from their career to and apply them to their personal life. They have a lot of good pieces there that if they would just bring over into the next thing, they could actually accelerate that path and work that out faster because they have all that experience behind something. Because the process is the same no matter what.
All right, so let's talk about any key takeaways or closing thoughts you might have on a permission to reflect.
The main idea here is that reflection is how we learn. And if you're not reflecting, you're probably just doing the same things over and over again. And you might think it's a new situation, but you're just in your patterns. We have all these strategies that we've built up to stay safe over time. And some of that stuff works, some of that stuff doesn't. If I commonly encounter a similar problem, that means I need to go inward, and there's something I'm not seeing. There's something I need to address within myself. I've created this workaround where I'm not willing to face the one thing that's holding me back. So the reflection part is about being able to detach and depersonalize things so that I can basically observe a situation rather than be wrapped up in it. The way we do that is we start to regulate the nervous system. So we focus on what you want, or we focus on the specific stress, and we start to experience it in the body and move through that and try to soften it. And as I soften the feelings in relationship to the stress, I'm able to shift my mind and see the situation differently, where I might be just be clinging on to a fear, or I might be trying to prevent something negative from happening that happened in my past. And so that naturally brings us to those issues. The work of healing is simply a perspective shift of I need to detach and depersonalize from this thing so that I can see the broader perspective of what's happened here. And so that starts to neutralize your mindset around the pain. And once we do that, now I can move forward more freely. I have less that's holding me back. I have less that's jamming up my system. I have less that's hindering my thought process. And so from that place, I can do the back and forth thing that we talked about of like, okay, I'm starting to take actions. I notice my mind goes back here, but I'm detaching from that. So that gets less and less power. And I'm continually realigning with what I want. The reflection process is actually an accelerator. We tend to think actions all that matters, but if we're not aligned, those actions are going to be ineffective or they could be damaging. And so the number one piece is paying attention to how you feel and aligning your mindset and your emotions with what you're trying to accomplish. And that's going to be this positive outlook or neutral mindset of like, I'm just seeing things as data, but then I'm not attaching to the narrative or story that sinks me or that pulls me into shame or makes me feel like I believe I can't have something, whatever it is. And so it's just this rhythm that we're trying to catch here so that we can make steady progress over time. Anything worth having is built through consistency. I need to show up on a regular basis. I need to give it focus, and I need to work the puzzle to try to get the pieces to click into place. And that's how we create flow. And that's how things can happen at an accelerated rate.
Okay, great. Let's, just like we do every week, talk a little bit about what you have coming up. I know you mentioned another biking trip, but outside of that, let's talk about what you got coming up, where people can find you, anything else you want to share.
Yeah. So if you're curious about this work and would like to have a conversation, you can schedule a free 30-minute strategy session on my website, brandonthielk.com. So I just get a little background on you and share how I can help. Also, if you want to register for my newsletter, The Lightning Report, that's also on my website. So I send out an update on the business each Monday with the podcast recap, some insights for the week and anything else going on. So be on the lookout for that. If you want to follow along on YouTube and Instagram at Brandon Thielk, we post out there pretty regularly. Also at bthielk on TikTok. And please like, subscribe, follow, ask any questions you may have. I would love to support you guys on a higher level. And yeah, so I'm excited. Wednesday, I'll be giving a talk at the cycling camp. So getting the speaking going. So excited about that. And yeah, I get to mix it up with the cycling house again. And it was such a cool experience and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a little more brief this time, but yeah, excited to get back out there and see what I can do.
Awesome. Be excited to hear how that goes. All right. Yes.
Until next time.
Yeah, we'll talk to you later.
I'll see you.